Good morning, everyone. Happy Saturday. Welcome in to the Golden Sombrero Show if you're watching us live here on YouTube and if you're listening to us on blazeradioonline.com. Happy Monday. We hope you've had a good Monday so far. It just gets better as now you're listening to the Golden Sombrero Show here on Blaze to talk about the latest in fun in baseball. And I'm Dominic Stern, joined by Ryan Blake and Cole Bradley. Guys, how are you doing this morning?
Doing all right, man. Doing all right.
Doing pretty good. Last night was crazy, but we'll get into that.
We will. And Ryan, of course, is referring to game one of Padres and Dodgers. And the game lived up to the hype. I mean, it's been hyped up all offseason after it was a thrilling series in the 2020 season that unfortunately didn't live up to the hype in the playoffs. Of course, Padres weren't anywhere close to 100% healthy. That happens. It's baseball. But this offseason, these two teams went at it, and they finally went out on the field for the first time and ended up going to extra as the Padres fought back, then had two chances to win it in extra innings. Couldn't do it, and then the Dodgers ended up scoring 5 runs in the 12th inning to end up taking down the Padres 11-6. And, I mean, that just caps it off. The Dodgers, they've done this for years. They're always beatable, and then they always find a way to get it done because they're so well coached, and they're just a little bit better than you at just about everything. They're sitting at 12-2, and the next best teams that have at least played a lot of games have 4 losses and significantly less amount of wins. So they find themselves on top of the standings, and it's probably going to stay that way. That was the indication that I got from this game.
Yeah, it was sort of the same I got as well. Like you said, they always find a way to win. That's sort of been their trademark. Ever since they've been good. I mean, they don't have 8 straight division titles for nothing. It's pretty evident that you put a run together like that, and you have solid players who can get the job done, who are able to simplify things. It's not about hitting the ball over the wall. It's just about putting it in play. Justin Turner proved that. Plenty of other guys in that 5-run 12th proved that as well. That team just finds a way to win every single time. They're so disciplined. I'd say the problem in last night's game for San Diego and probably for this entire season so far is just the defense. That too many costly mistakes, and that'll taper off. They'll figure that out. But there's a time and a place to know when you got to eat a throw, and I'm sure you know what I'm referring to.
Right.
There's times where you just sit on it. Don't try and make things harder than they have to be, because those things will cost you. And that happened a few times, it seemed like, last night. So
Yeah, both teams did not play good defense last night. I think both teams had 3 errors, if I'm correct. And like you said, Cole, that stuff's going to taper off. It's early in the season. There's going to be a lot of things to fine-tune and clean up. But Dom, you mentioned injuries to the Padres, which they've been riddled with injuries. There's no doubt about that. But so the Dodgers, they're without their second best player in Cody Bellinger. And they're still putting up 11 runs and still able to strike at any time with that dangerous offense. So that's just how good this Dodgers team is. The Padres had multiple chances to win it, and they just didn't execute. And I think that's what it has to come down to, if you're looking at it from a Padres perspective, is that they got to be able to execute when it's late in the game and have those opportunities to win the game. And whether it is doing those little things like small ball or mainly just going with situational hitting, because the Dodgers had a couple shifts on. Mainly they had the infield in because there were second and third, 1 out, stuff like that. But gotta credit the Dodgers. They got key strikeouts when they needed to, and they got the runs that they needed. So everything fell into place for them. For the Padres, they just got to clean up the defense. And I don't know what to tell you besides Tim Hill. You can't leave something over the plate like that to Corey Seager. You can't. He's going to take that for a ride 10 times out of 10. So, but last night was by far the best game of the season so far. And if that's any indication of all the games that we're going to see this season between these two teams, sign me up.
Game 1 of 19 and went the Dodgers' way. But yeah, and you mentioned it, Cole, the Padres defense needs to clean it up. And, Fernando Tatis Jr., he now is up to 7 or even 8 errors. I forget if the last one was ruled an error. I mean, that's a lot. He still leads all of baseball, and he, of course, has missed 10 games going on the injured list. So he's got to clean stuff up if the Padres want to be able to, do successful things. Because, like you mentioned, you got to be able to limit the damage, especially when you play a team like the Dodgers. And stuff happens. The one throwing error he made that ended up costing the Padres 3 runs. That was an aggressive error. He made a great play. It's like, okay, good job. But like Cole mentioned, you got to know when to just eat it and just hold on to the ball. And then the Padres only give up 1 run that inning on the wild pitch that inning instead of the 2 runs on the throwing error. But it happens. What are you going to do about it? All right. So now that we've talked about what happened last night, Golden Sombreros, we'll start with it this time instead of ending with our Golden Sombreros. Yoshi Satsugo had our first one last Saturday, followed up by Anthony Alford of the Pittsburgh Pirates, Kevin Padlow of the Rays, Jorge Soler, Ryan, your boy from the Royals. Great home run hitter, but tends to also strike out as well.
He had a string of 7 straight strikeouts.
Yeah, Matt Chapman had 9 last year, so don't feel too bad.
No, it's just I'm used to it with Soler. Soler's become the typical DH that's home run or strikeout, really. It's frustrating, but it's just what he's become.
Right. Jonathan Scope of the Detroit Tigers, Wilmer Difo of the Pirates. He actually got a Golden Sombrero in the first 5 innings of the game against the Padres. They ended up beating the Padres in that game, so I don't think he really cares. Mike Trout got a Golden Sombrero. That, of course, is always rare. Yes, Ryan's Royals did that. Jackie Bradley Jr. of the Milwaukee Brewers, Adam Duvall of the Marlins, Garrett Hampson of the Rockies, Trey Mancini of the Orioles. That is your up-to-date Golden Sombrero report. Those are the guys who have gotten some Golden Sombreros. So that is the update for that. And I want to talk about, we talked about more standings last week. I want to start this episode talking about some players who got off to great starts. And I feel like the player you got to start with is Ronald Acuna Jr. And, a lot of people have talked about how, he is he's the MVP guy for the Braves. And then Freddie Freeman's just like, guys, I won this last year. But so far this year for the Braves, it's been Ronald Acuna Jr. And he's kind of carrying the team on a pitching staff that has struggled mightily to start the year because the Braves are 6-8. But you look at Ronald Acuna Jr., he is not the reason that they're 6-8. He already has 7 home runs. He's batting .429 on the season with a .946 slugging percentage and a .266 OPS plus. I mean, how impressive has he been, guys?
All right, so I picked him to be the NL leader in home runs, and you're seeing what he's doing. His power has taken up to another level this season. He's hitting really well. Like you just said, Dom, he has been the anchor of that offense for a pitching staff that has really struggled and an offense that has relatively struggled as well, especially because you've seen Marcell Ozuna and Ozzy Albies really struggled so far to start this season. But Ronald Acuna is doing it all. He is really playing some great baseball. I don't think we've seen him be this strong at the start in his entire career. He leads the league in home runs with 7 home runs in 14 games, leads the league in hits, runs, RBIs, has the highest slugging percentage, OPS plus. He's doing it all. Who knows if he's going to keep it up? It's early in the season, but right now it's an indication that he is on fire and that he is going to be the guy that the Braves expect him to be year in, year out as their MVP guy alongside the reigning MVP and Freddie Freeman. So great start for Acuna. Let's hope he can keep it up and the Braves can really get something going.
Yeah, and honestly, just look at this last week. He's hit 4 home runs with a .464 average, .529 OBP, slugging over 1,000, which is ridiculous. And if you watch his at-bats, one thing that really stands out is he's more disciplined. He goes up there and he sees a lot more pitches than he normally does. And there's nothing wrong with being aggressive, but if you sort of watch the best hitters in the game, they're not always going up there and swinging at the first pitch fastball. They're waiting. They're getting deep in the counts. They're seeing as many pitches as they can see. That's what separates the great hitters from the good ones. And if you watch what he's doing this year, he's actually almost walked as much as he struck out, which is pretty impressive as well. He's put the ball in play. When you put the ball in play, good things happen. And like Ryan said, he's really strong. I mean, I watched I think it was the series finale against the Marlins, and that home run that wasn't exactly the most impressive, but the one that he hit that just got out of the yard and into the bullpen was literally on the label of the bat. And that's like one of the weakest parts of the bat. So, and he just muscled it out of the yard. So that takes some strength. So yeah, he's been very, very impressive, and he's definitely had some great at bats. And that's what's really impressive for me is just if you watch him as a hitter, he looks more disciplined. You can tell he's more seasoned now, and that's only going to help him. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if he's well on his way to a 50-30 season, which has never happened before. And I think if there's anyone in baseball who can do it today, it's him.
He's only at 3 stolen bases at the moment, but yeah, you're certainly right. He can get there, and the home runs are certainly there. And, if the home runs ever teeter off just a little bit, all of a sudden he's getting on base more, getting more walks, getting more singles, and then he can get those stolen bases like you mentioned. So the home runs, he's off to a great pace so far. I mean, I'm thinking in how many games have the Braves played? They have played 14, and he's hit 7 home runs. So he's on pace for 81 home runs, the very sustainable rate that would set the single-season home run record. Is he going to get there? I think the safe bet is no. But if he does, that would be incredible. And especially when you consider that home runs are significantly down so far to start this year. I don't have the numbers, but I mean, just like literally watching the game, the balls are not the same balls we've seen the past couple of years. And Ronald Acuna Jr. has not cared. He's gone out, and he's also raked. So I want to throw it back to you guys. Who have been some other players that have really impressed you guys to start the season?
I'll go talk about Arizona a little bit here, just because I was thinking about them a little bit, and they're not off to the greatest start, and particularly on the pitching front. But Taylor Widener has sort of been thrown into this like number 4 starter role, and he has never sort of had to take on that. And guys, yesterday he went toe-to-toe with Max Scherzer for like 6 or 7 shutout innings. It was amazing. It was so cool. In his first 3 starts, and mind you, I'm pretty sure his first 3 big league starts, like ever. I think he had some starts last year, but you know what I mean. 1.59 ERA in 17 innings. He's only struck out 11, but he's not a huge strikeout guy, and he's got a whip at under 1.2. He's been really, really solid. And I mean, again, for a pitching staff that, to say the least, has not been good, it's been mediocre at best. He's definitely been like the ace so far. He's been very, very solid. And I'm just hoping he continues it, because goodness knows they need some help on that front. So I was just browsing some stats this morning, and he really stood out to me, and especially after his gem yesterday. So he definitely needs to be recognized by me.
So I have a few guys. I am going to start with a couple of worlds. The first one is going to be Whit Merrifield. He's continuously hitting well. The lineup's producing, and it's because of him. He's the anchor of that lineup at the top, hitting 364, has 16 hits. He's doing it all, and he's continuously getting on base. So Whit Merrifield has been extremely strong to start the season, especially at the top of the order. The other one I'd like to shout out is Jacob Junis. In 12 innings this year, he's only allowed 2 runs. And he didn't even allow them, technically. They came in after he was pulled. And this is not the Jacob Junis I've been used to. Jacob Junis is the type of pitcher who has given up countless home runs. Looking at his stats in his career, he has surrendered 85 home runs, and he's only in his 5th year. So he gives up a lot of home runs, and he hasn't given up one. He hasn't given up one yet so far. Knock on wood. But he's been super impressive, especially because the Royals haven't set a final 5th starter yet. And Junis has gone 5 innings and 5 innings and just been dominant, shutting down some very good offenses. So I'm happy with how he's looked. And I think that he's definitely given himself the best case he could to give himself the last starter spot. Sticking with the AL Central, I got to look at Nelson Cruz. He was hot last week, hitting 4 home runs, and he's hitting 390 right now. He also has 16 hits, 10 RBIs. The Minnesota offense has been kind of lacking so far, but he hasn't. He's been a big piece of that offense, bringing the power. So I'm very excited. I'm very happy to see Nelson Cruz continue to dominate. And then my last guy is Yerman Mercedes. How can we not talk about this guy? Hitting 476, OPS plus of 266, 3 home runs, 10 RBIs, including that moonshot 485-foot bomb against the Royals. So Yerman Mercedes has really cemented himself as a top piece in that White Sox lineup. So those are my guys that have really impressed me so far.
Yeah, I want to talk about Byron Buxton. I mean, he's kind of a guy that a lot of people labeled as a bust, and a lot of baseball fans like me were like, "Yeah, hold off." Like, he's been an average player so far. And last year, he finally got going in the right direction. And then this year, he's only played in 9 games so far, but he has a 354 OPS plus, and he has 5 home runs in 32 at bats. So another really unsustainable rate for another outfielder that's extremely fast and plays great defense. Extremely valuable player for the Twins, and like Ryan said, an offense that hasn't been great, but he certainly has been. And then a player for the Red Sox who had a very down year in 2020, which of course was a season that a lot of Red Sox fans would love to forget, when they end up going. The Red Sox are one of the most polarizing teams in baseball because they'll win 108 games like they did in 2018, then turn around 2 years later with basically the same roster. I mean, minus Mookie Betts, of course, and finish in last place. But JD Martinez has had a rebound year, and he's currently hitting 378 with a 440 OBP and a 255 OPS plus. Just off to a great start, and he, alongside Rafael Devers, are just absolutely killing it so far this year. And there's certainly big reasons of why the Red Sox are in first place in the American League East, just like we all predicted, right, guys? Just kidding.
Yeah, we saw that really clearly.
No, and I have not been a big fan of their team, but that him and Alex Verdugo have been great players, and they're just a really fun team to watch. And I think it's looking like I could be wrong. Now, it's still early. They did lose yesterday, but or they lost 2 days ago to the Twins. And let's go. Cole, you said you want to talk about Corbin Burns. Let's hear it.
I do. Absolutely, yes. If you want to talk about an electric factory, look no further. Corbin Burns has been ridiculous this year. And I've watched him pitch a few times just because he's sort of been on my radar since spring training because I watched him a few times. And he just looks so good. 0.49 ERA. He's the first to 30 strikeouts. At least that's what I'm aware of. He's got a whip of 0.22 in 18 1/3. He's given up 4 hits. He's only given up 1 earned run, which I'm pretty sure was a Byron Buxton homer in the game in his first start against the Twins, where he was taken deep after both him and Barrios had a no-hitter into like the 7th. This guy's been incredible, and if you watch him pitch again, and I talked a little bit about the Brewers, I think last week, but this is a team where the pitching is there, and it's pretty evident. Like Freddie Peralta, Brandon Woodruff is obviously one of the more underrated starters in baseball. Corbin Burns is now getting up there. The bullpen is good. I know Devin Williams has not been the best this year, but he was a rookie of the year for a reason. So, and I'm sure he'll sort of bounce back at some point. Josh Hader's in there. The pitching is there. The problem with them is they need to score runs, and you see it like almost every game. Like they just struggle to score runs. But when Corbin Burns has been on the mound, it's been incredible to watch. He's so fun. He's so nasty. The way he mixes in that cutter with his breaking pitches as well is absolutely filthy. He throws like a 98-mile-an-hour cutter. Like that's incredibly hard to time up. A cutter's already like the hardest pitch in baseball to hit, let alone when it's coming at you at that speed. So, he's been amazing. I feel like you can't really talk about pitching in general without bringing him up. So he's been a stud, and I just hope he keeps it going because especially after last year where we saw what he can be. He had a really, really good season. It's just about getting run support for him, because there's no way the Brewers are going to be able to win games if this guy goes out and dominates. It's like the Jacob deGrom effect. You can't win if you can't score, especially if you have your ace on the mound. So, he's been very impressive nonetheless, and I hope he continues it.
One more guy I want to point out is Tyler Naquin. He's hitting at an unattainable rate. In 34 at-bats, he has 5 home runs. He's really bringing a boost to that lineup. And what we had talked about a lot is with the Reds, they haven't had their contact hitter that they needed. They have all the power that they need with Castellanos, with Moustakas, Suarez, Votto, now even Tyler Naquin. They just don't have that contact bat, and Naquin has been terrific so far. Of course, it's unattainable. He's not going to hit 5 home runs every 30 at-bats, but he's on fire right now, and he's really playing some good baseball, and he has a hot bat.
Yeah, and one more pitcher, I want to shout out is Cole's Cy Young pick. That is Tyler Glasnow. He's been off to a killer start so far in 19 2/3 of an inning. He has 29 strikeouts and a .46 ERA. He's off to a great start. And he's throwing that new pitcher. It's a combo between a slider and a cutter. So when I say this, I probably shouldn't say what he calls it because, FCC or whatnot. But just think it's a mix between a slider and a cutter. And it's added a new dynamic to his pitching game because he was strictly fastball, 12-6 curveball. But now all of a sudden he's adding that lateral movement to his game, and he's been super unhittable for the Tampa Bay Rays. And the people who are calling him overrated because he had a decent 2020 season, those people are idiots. And I'm talking to all you Yankee fans out there. But one more pitcher we definitely need to shout out is Carlos Rodon. He threw the second no-hitter of the season, and he was a couple of inches away from throwing a perfect game. I mean, you could technically say that about Joe Musgrove too, but his was in the 4th inning. When Rodon ended up hitting Roberto Perez, it was perfect in the 9th inning. And it was just one batter. That's all it takes, but was still able to complete the no-hitter. And Rodon's gone through a lot. I mean, he hasn't pitched over 120 innings since 2018. He's never pitched over 160 innings. Always been a really talented lefty, and he had struggled in recent years. He had over a 5 ERA in 2019. He had over an 8 ERA last year. Was only able to go 7 innings in 2020 because he's always had shoulder and then elbow injuries. But he was able to get out there this season and throw a no-hitter, and it was pretty awesome to watch because, I mean, every no-hitter has their story, but to know what Rodon has been through and to watch him go out there and be able to do that was pretty awesome.
Yeah, 100% agree. And you talk about how there's a story behind every no-hitter, and I forget who wrote it, but there's a really good article in The Athletic about his sort of his comeback trail and what he went through that was put out after he threw it. And this guy he's a dog. I mean, he's a competitor. He does not like to lose. He does not like to be on the wrong end of things. He's gone through 2 surgeries, 2 big time surgeries, virtually since college. The velo has been pretty inconsistent. I mean, he's really only sat in the low 90s, and he's flashed the potential that he can sit in the high 90s. And the fastest pitch he threw in 4 seasons was 99 miles an hour, and it was on the 111th pitch of the game. Like, talk about emptying the tank. And I didn't watch the entire game. I watched the last 3 outs, just like I did with Joe Musgrove. And the one thing I noticed that was different between the two was that Rodon was just emptying the tank. I mean, he was giving it everything he had. It wasn't like slider. And that's nothing against Musgrove, but like that's how you get outs and everything. And that's what I noticed in his last inning. Rodon was coming right after guys, and he was absolutely just letting it rip. And it was 98, 99. And those are the fastest pitches, again, he's thrown in multiple seasons. And so that's just so awesome to see a guy just giving it everything he has, emptying, leaving it all out on the line in the last inning. And regardless of what happens, he just, he wants to go out his way. He wants to go out with a bang. And that was super cool to watch because if there's any guy who's deserving on that pitching staff, it's him. They non-tendered him this offseason. There was a lot of speculation that he wasn't even going to come back, but he wants to win there. He wanted to stay there, so he was willing to take a pay cut. And now look at this. He's thrown a no-hitter. Now it's about building off of that, because as a guy who's deserving enough to throw that, he's still got 30-plus starts this year. So it's about just continuing to prove that he has a place in that rotation, because it's one of the better ones in the American League. And building off of this. But kudos to him. I mean, again, I'm all for pitching, and I couldn't be happier for a guy like that, because, I mean, especially a guy who's had to endure that much, he was more than deserving. So congrats to him.
Yeah, looking at Carlos Rodon, I was watching that game on my way to our softball game, Dom, and Parker and I, my roommate, we were watching it, and when he hit Roberto Perez, I was so upset, because even though it's a team I despise, you still want to see history be made, someone cement themselves in history. The funny thing is, before the inning, I said, watch the perfect game end with him hitting someone. And he hits Roberto Perez. Of all people, he hits Roberto Perez. But he's been dominant so far, especially last game. This is a man who has a career ERA over 4. And in 14 innings this season, he hasn't allowed a run. Of course, it helps that 9 of those innings were no-hit baseball, and 8 1/3 were perfect baseball. But he's been so good to start the season. And like Cole said, this is a guy who's battled with injuries. And whether he could come back from those injuries and still be a productive pitcher, and that's what he's been so far. Of course, like you said, Cole, he's got to build off of it. He's still got 30-ish starts left this season. So if he can continue to pitch like this, then if you are the White Sox, you got to be happy. His best ERA came his rookie season with a 3.75 ERA. If he can be 3.5, 3.6 ERA, that's all the White Sox really need out of him, because he's their 4 guy. That's all they really need. And right now he's playing well, and I'm happy to see him finally bounce back after all that he's gone through in his career so far. So congrats to him.
Yeah. And I mean, you're talking about how you hate the White Sox, and how, you still were able to root for it. I mean, it was against the Indians too, who I know that you also don't like. So I'm sure that I
hate the White Sox more than any other team.
Yeah, I'm sure. But at the same time, it's not like you like the Indians. So it made it a little easier to root for Rodon, I'm sure.
That is very true. That's very true.
Right. And I mean, the elusive 24th perfect game, I just still think it's wild that there's only been 23 ever perfect games in MLB history. And it just shows you how hard it is to get this perfect game. It's been, 10 years now since Felix Hernandez's perfect game, and there hasn't been one since. And I mean, just to show, Rodon's was the 307th no-hitter in baseball history, but there's only been 23 perfect games. I mean, those 1 or 2 guys that get on base, that's the difference between a perfect game and a no-hitter. It's just so elusive, and it would have been celebrated 10 times more, almost more. I mean, considering there's been 23 and then 307, they're 10 times as rare. And for someone like Rodon, like Cole mentioned, I mean, Cole, you hit the story, hit right on the head. For what he's been through, that would have been awesome, because King Felix, as awesome as his was, he was in the prime of what is a borderline Hall of Fame career. And, not taking anything away from his perfect game, but I think the story of Rodon's perfect game would have been just a little bit cooler. All right, well, let's move into the standings. Let's talk about the standings, because we haven't really talked about it other than the Dodgers sitting at 12-2. I would talk about Ryan's Royals to start, but his camera's currently off. So, all right.
We're back.
There you go. All right.
Right in the nick of time, too.
Well, because, Ryan, you were talking about your when we were talking about players that have started off well, and you talked about some Kansas City Royals. You didn't even bring up the fact they're in first place. So I'll leave the floor open to you. What's been good for the Royals so far?
I didn't talk about it because I was waiting for us to get in the standings. This is beautiful, guys. I want to go with some history real quick. And each year, 2017, 18, and 19, the Royals won 7 games in April each year. In the first 11 games, they've won 7. It's incredible to see that this is a team that hasn't been fully healthy, with Dozier, who's starting to hit. He had a rough start to the season with a thumb contusion. Mondesi hasn't even touched the field yet. And then you've had pitching struggles with Keller, even though his last outing he was terrific. The bullpen's been a little bit spotty, and the team keeps saying they aren't clicking yet. I want to see this team fully healthy and clicking because they're in first place right now. I know it's 11 games, but this isn't going to keep up. The Royals aren't going to get first in the division. And it's just incredible to see how the team is continuously putting up runs. And the one guy I still have to highlight from this past week is Salvador Perez. He had 8 hits against the Angels. He was on fire. Carlos Santana, his average doesn't say a lot, but his ability to get on base via the walk is uncanny. He continuously drowns out quality at-bats and gets on base. So I'm happy with how the Royals are looking. The one issue with me is first off, they got to get healthy. And 2, the bullpen's got to get more consistent because they gave up 5 runs and nearly gave up the lead when they were up 7-0 against the Blue Jays the other night. But I'm extremely happy with where the Royals are at. I can't complain. First place in the division. Everything's really clicking. Even though they won't say it, a lot of things are clicking on the field right now.
Yeah. Cole, you got any notes on the Royals?
Yeah, I watched a little bit of them a couple nights ago, and they just look very offensive oriented. And I will say that at least since I've been into baseball and watching the Royals, that's one thing that's sort of been missing. I mean, I think they've always been pitcher centric. And not to say that they don't have that, but the offense definitely stands above the rest. Like you said, Merrifield looks good. Salvador Perez looks good. I think Hanser Alberto is going to be, in the long run, a really good addition for them as far as offense is concerned. Obviously, Jorge Soler is going to mash. This team just looks really staunch offensively, and that's what you want. Obviously, you want to score runs. You mentioned Carlos Santana. Like you said, even though the average isn't there, that guy's definitely proved to be a good signing so far. He's definitely gotten on base, and he's sort of done what he's done his whole career. I mean, he's been a very formidable hitter from both sides of the plate, and that's always what you want. But yeah, I think it's a bit surprising, to be honest, considering the firepower that's in this division. And I know this is the first 11 games and things will taper off, but Kansas City just looks like a first place team, because it's one thing to play like a first place team, and it's another thing to just look the part. Like you're not only playing that way, but they have that look as well. And they just, I don't know, they just strike me as a team that could definitely compete and give the top of the division a run for its money the rest of the way, which is good for the Royals because that's virtually been kind of the issue over the past few seasons, ever since they won the World Series, I feel like. So yeah, I mean, I'm excited for them. And we'll talk about some of the other AL teams that are in first place, but it's not exactly how we thought it was going to go. And that's okay because it's the beginning of the season and obviously things will turn into something else, but who knows? The Royals and many other teams could sort of take advantage of this first 11 games.
Yeah, and what I've looked at a lot is for the Royals, the offense is putting up a lot of runs, and yet there are guys who just haven't been clicking yet with the bat, and the main one's been Andrew Benintendi. He's starting to hit a little bit, still not really fully there yet, but I'm happy to see how the Royals have gone from a team that was so defensive pitcher heavy in 2015, using small ball to win games, and now they can beat you with the long ball. They're hitting a lot more home runs than I thought they'd be hitting, and I'm happy with where they're at. Hanser Alberto has been terrific so far, especially with the injury to Dozier. He's been able to go in and play a lot of third, and his ability to hit against lefties has been extremely beneficial so far.
Right. And, I mean, I was going to mention that Benintendi hasn't been off to a great start. And, I mean, Santana, he's been getting on base and drawing walks. He's drawn 8 walks. I don't know where that ranks in terms of baseball, but that's got to be way up there at the top. So, you're not too concerned. I mean, he's Slam Tana. Everyone calls him Slam Tana. And I don't know, a way to, come up with the nickname for him. But, I mean, there's got to be some, some nickname for him to where he draws walks. That is your mission, Ryan. Next episode, next week, you have to come back with a new nickname for Carlos Santana that has something to do with him walking, okay? That's your duty.
Let's see what I can do.
All right. But, yeah, I mean, once he gets, the bat actually going, once Soler gets the bat really going, I mean, he only has 1 home run so far on the year in all 11 games. And once Benintendi gets a turnaround, I mean, this lineup's going to be a little more impressive. And, I mean, you look at it. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, I think the White Sox are going to be better than this team. I mean, they've scored more runs and they've allowed less runs in more games. They have played 13 games, but they've allowed less runs than the Royals have. I think in the long run, they're going to finish in front of the Royals. But, from what the Royals have shown so far is that they'll be with them for a long time this season. And, with the way that some teams have started so far this year, maybe they can sneak into the playoffs as a wild card team. And it's been a good start for them. Anything else we want to highlight in the AL Central?
Just something I have to say. We all know what happened the last time the Royals got a wild card.
We do, yes. Cole, in fact, was talking about it in his class presentation the other day, talking about the A's and Yoenis Cespedes and how
if you guys noticed, right as they got right near the 2014 AL wildcard game, my camera went on during class.
I was paying attention to Cole.
I didn't notice. I was presenting.
That was mainly towards Dom, not you. You were presenting. But I was just like, I don't want to have my camera on, and then I was like, hey, now I'll have it on.
Yeah, and I was also paying attention to Cole's presentation because I'm a good classmate. And
thank you.
It
was fun.
It's all good.
One of the better presentations we've had. So.
Well, I appreciate that. John Walters does not like analytics. Let's just leave it at that.
That is.
I mean, he appreciates them, but he doesn't want them to take over. He understands that there are humans on the baseball field, and he's right.
I agree.
Analytics work, but you have to know when
they shouldn't be the be all. Yeah, they shouldn't be the be all end all.
Mm-hmm. Right. And we saw that was point in case Game 6 of the World Series this past year.
Yes.
And let's talk about the team that lost in Game 6 of the World Series in that division. A nice little transition there. Thank you, Dom. The Rays, they've allowed 76 runs in baseball, which is amongst one of the most in all of baseball. And I'm not sure I would have expected that coming into the year. They are currently 6-8, and right in front of the Yankees, we're at 5-8. And at the top of this division is the Red Sox at 9-4, currently 3 games on top. I mean, to play 13 games and then have a 3-game lead over the division, I mean, that's a pretty impressive start. It speaks for itself, but what do we make of this really weird AL East right now?
The Yankees are in last, dude. That is crazy. And it's also kind of funny because last night was an all-time low when they were throwing all the baseballs on the field and they were acting like Yankee fans. Passionate in a word. This is just kind of funny. I don't know. It's kind of comical because the Orioles are ahead of them even. It's just kind of funny. And the Blue Jays, who have been playing pretty mediocre baseball, they've been sort of carried by their young stars, which I think was sort of expected. Bo Bichette had an incredible week.
What you have to look at, though, with the Blue Jays, I may say, is George Springer's not healthy yet. I think they'll really take off once they get Springer back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and once the pitching gets a little bit healthier, too, I feel like once they figure that whole thing out, because the pitching is definitely the biggest question mark. But, yeah, I don't know. This division is very weird right now. And, obviously, you talked about Boston. I don't know what it is. I just think it's Alex Cora. This team just looks a lot better with Alex Cora at the helm. And I feel like him being back is definitely, I don't know, lighting a fire under these guys, which that's good. And, regardless of what happened in the past, I think Alex Cora is a great manager. I seriously do. I think he's amongst one of the best in baseball. And I don't even think you can really argue that just because of the track record and just what he's done. And, those players believe in him and all that. And he's just great. But, I mean, they've been hitting well. The pitching hasn't been dominant, but it's been very good. And that was their problem last year, was the pitching, particularly the relievers. This team just didn't have depth on that front. And a lot of guys were injured, and a lot of guys are still injured, but they're definitely proving to be a little bit more competent on that end of things. And that's good for a team that is expected to finish in the bottom half of this division. Because if they can defy expectations and if they can be the Red Sox that they have the potential of being, then they can win a lot of games and they can actually make the postseason. I mean, and you've seen it this year. They played a really good series against the Twins offensively. Alex Verdugo looked really good. JD Martinez, you talked about him a little bit. yeah, this team is just very, very solid. And I think that they're going to be a lot better if they continue to play the way they played than a lot of people think they're going to be. So, but the Yankees are in last, and that's just kind of funny if you ask me.
They're not. Hold on, two things before we talk about other teams. The Yankees are not only in last in the division, they're last in the American League. And I predict them to go to the World Series and represent the American League because I don't think the American League is that good. But I gave serious warnings all offseason. This starting and relief pitching staff is not good, and they have not been that good, and the offense hasn't been able to carry them yet. I'm very confident in that offense, and they'll get it going, and they'll be back on top of this division, or at least near the top if the Red Sox keep this up. But, it's been really funny, like you mentioned. And then another thing, if we're going to talk about great managers, and, of course, managers who, of course, have shady pasts, A.J. Hinch, another great manager, forgot to mention this. The Tigers and A.J. Hinch went into Minute Maid Park and swept the Houston Astros this week, and I thought that was a really cool thing. Shout out to you, T-Dog, and our boy Nakash. The Tigers, man, that was an impressive sequence of events, and I mean, they don't have much to show for it because they're 6-8. But hey, they swept the Houston Trastros. All right, let's go back to the AL East. Ryan, you have any notes you want to talk about on this division?
Yeah, so last night I was actually talking to a few Yankee fans that I was with, and they're all like, "Oh, don't worry." That Nakash just says right away, he's like, "The Tigers have more wins than the Yankees." And it was so funny because this Yankees team is just not hitting. The pitching staff is subpar at best outside of Garrett Cole. Corey Kluber has not looked good. I know it's only been 2 starts, but boy, he has not looked good.
But was there anything to expect out of him being good? No.
I did not expect him to be this shaky.
No.
I didn't expect him to be good. I expected him to be all right at best, but he's looked worse than I thought he was going to look. Tyone's actually looked fine. I've been good with Tyon, and Yankee fans are just wait till Severino comes back.
No, he had Tommy John.
Yeah, Tommy John.
Right off Tommy John.
That's what they say every year. Wait till Severino comes back.
But
yeah,
you can't just be like that when he's coming off of an injury. You have to take it step by step and in increments to where he can nearly get back to what he was. He's not going to be Luis Severino right as he comes back. And the offense hasn't been able to do anything. Aaron Judge has not done anything besides his little 2 home run game against the Blue Jays, which they ended up losing because their bullpen's trash. Overall, this Yankees team is just disappointing. I don't think I've seen a Yankees team this weak in my life. And we expected a lot of this. We expected them to not have as good of a pitching staff, and it shows right now. The worst thing they did was not give Tanaka the money. They needed to retain Tanaka, and it's looking like it is going to bite them throughout this season.
2 things. First off, Aaron Judge slander is not allowed on the show unless if he has an OPS below. He's a 159 OPS plus in 11 games so far. I don't know how you can say that's nothing. He's been really good. He's been their best player so far. So stop it right there. And, DJ LeMahieu, he's been okay. He's definitely come back to reality, which is what we all knew would happen eventually. It's why he only got $90 million on his contract. Gary Sanchez has been slightly above average. But that's it. That's it from this offense. You look at it. Jay Bruce, who they thought was going to be a guy that could help replace Luke Voit, and once Luke Voit comes back in a month or so, that'll be a game changer for this offense. Jay Bruce has been terrible. I finally cut the string in fantasy on him. He had such a good spring training. I was all bought into the hype, and I was so wrong. Gleyber Torres hasn't been great. Gio Urshela, wouldn't you know it? He finally is not hitting the tar off the ball like he has been the past year and a half. Clint Frazier has not been good. Aaron Hicks has not been good. And Giancarlo Stanton has not been good. Now, those are all great hitters that we know are going to end up hitting above average or at least get, to the average point in terms of things. They'll be fine. But this pitching staff is just so mind-bogglingly bad. And I don't understand where everyone thought the pitching staff was going to be good. And the bullpen, looking at it, actually hasn't been as bad as they're getting a lot of credit for. It's just been in the clutch situations, they haven't been able to get it done. And I mean, the pitching staff has actually been, the bullpen has been really good just looking at these guys. I mean, you got Green, 1.17 ERA, Losaiga, 1.13, Sessa, 1.17. Darren O'Day in 5 innings hasn't allowed a run. Michael King in 9 innings hasn't allowed a run. Chapman yet to allow a run. So, I mean, looking at the bullpen, they're doing good, but that starting rotation sucks. And I said it was going to suck coming into the year. And I was told by Yankee fans, you're wrong. And here's a message to you, Yankee fans. You're wrong. And Luis Severino, he's not going to be that good when he comes back this year. The really good pitchers, they get Tommy John. When they come back, the following year is when they start to get really good. So you could expect good things from him in 2022 if he comes back healthy this year. But temper your expectations, Yankee fans. That is what I'll say. All right, let's move out west. Let's talk about it because the Seattle Mariners are in first place at 9-5 with a -7 run differential. Talk about unsustainable things, but their pitching staff has been actually pretty entertaining to watch. Justin Dunn has been good. Justice Sheffield has been good. And the weirdest thing about it, and my friend Bennett from back home, he's a Mariners fan. He's been complaining about Marco Gonzalez, who's expected to be their ace. He hasn't been as good this year. Yet at the same time, the Mariners are in first place, and I don't see that happening and finishing out like this because the Astros and the Angels have gone cold this week. But all of a sudden, this division is looking like Mariners and A's, which it certainly wasn't looking like the first week.
Yeah, like you said, and I want to talk a little bit about Oakland because they've sort of surged back from their pretty abysmal start. They took both games against Arizona, which was kind of heartbreaking, but that's whatever. Yeah, the Mariners, and it's weird because I feel like this happens a lot. I don't know. I don't remember if it happened last year. In fact, I don't think it did. I remember in 2019, they got off to this stratospherical start and they led the league in homers or something. And they were ridiculous and they were absolutely amazing. And then they hit May or June and it was like a completely different team. It was like watching the Pittsburgh Pirates. They were bad, but there's some about April and the Mariners. They just always get off to a hot start. And like you said, you talked about Justin Dunn and Justice Sheffield. These are two very young arms who are going to anchor the rotation for the foreseeable future. Both guys I really like as well. They got great stuff, and they definitely go out there and compete every single time they're out there, which is good to see. Yeah, I don't know. I think they're just sort of, and I think they're doing it without Kyle Lewis, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if Kyle Lewis has been in the lineup. At least he wasn't there at the beginning of the season. So that's a pretty big thing because I'd argue that Kyle Lewis as of right now is probably one of, if not their best player. And that's saying something because, again, the Mariners still have Kyle Seager and they still have those guys. So, yeah, it's an interesting start. But, I mean, the Angels, I think, have been performing very, very well, even given all the injuries that they have right now. I think once those guys sort of get healthy and once Rendon starts to hit as well, they're definitely going to be very good. But, Jared Walsh has been really good. Obviously, Mike Trout is the best player in baseball. Shohei Ohtani has been hitting the crap out of the ball. Just killing the baseball. So hopefully he continues to do that. I think they're still going to end up finishing first in this division. But as you can see, this is a very weak division. Really, anything can happen. Houston's not even out of it. Houston's been solid. I don't think their record actively reflects how solid they've been. They did get swept by the Tigers, and that sort of stinks. But they're definitely going to continue to get better and be good. So, yeah, I think this division is just sort of shaping out as I expect it to be. It's wild. It's all over the place, and it's probably going to continue to be that way for probably at least another month, maybe a month and a half before you really start to see it take shape. Because I feel like that's just how the AL West goes every year.
Yeah, this is one of the crazier divisions, and what you have to look at is I'm going to highlight the Angels real quick. Shohei Ohtani, he dominated against the Royals in the first two games. Had a home run, had few RBIs. He was killing it. And the Angels are actually playing a lot better than I expected this to start. Of course, I picked them to win this division, but I didn't expect them to be this strong from the get-go, and they've looked really good. The pitching staff has looked better than I would have thought. They didn't really make any notable or big-name signings to add to that pitching staff, and it hasn't looked bad. So I think that for the Angels, it's just they need to be able to manufacture more runs. And I think a big reason why they're struggling a little bit in some games is because Anthony Rendon is hurt, and when he wasn't playing, he wasn't hitting well. So once he gets healthy, I think that'll help. So I still think that the Angels are the. I still think they're going to win this division. For the Astros, they've ran into a lot of injuries to Bregman and Altuve. So they've ran into injury problems, and I don't see much from this team. The best part about it that I've seen was Greinke throwing the 51-mile-per-hour eephus. But it's just the Astros, I still think are a team on the decline, and I think that if what is happening holds up, I think they're going to get third in the division because the A's have found their stride. They've won 6 in a row, and they're now 7-7 after starting out 0-6. So they've really found their stride. The best thing that happened to them was that walk-off win over the Dodgers from Mitch Moreland. So the A's are starting to get it going. But as of right now, it's the Mariners. The Mariners are playing really well. It's that young core that they have. They have an extremely young team that's really starting to take form. They're playing really good baseball right now. The only thing is that they did lose James Paxton, needs Tommy John surgery. But that young core is putting up runs. And I said at the beginning of the year that Kyle Seager is underrated. And he's having a very, very good start to the season so far.
Yeah, he's off to a great start. Mitch Haniger has been another key bat in that lineup. That was really cool because he's another guy who's come back from cancer and has battled injuries and is finally fully healthy, and you're seeing how good of a player he could have been had he stayed fully healthy. Let's move over to the NL as we only have a couple more minutes to talk about this. And the Mets are in first place despite having over half their games canceled, none of which were issues having to do with the Mets. Of course, their opening series with the Nationals. And then they've just ran into a couple of weather delays. And it's funny, they've only played 8 games, but by winning percentage, they're in first place in the NL East at 5-3, which is funny because the Phillies, they've coming back a little bit down to earth. Pitching staff is still doing good for them, so that bodes well for the future. Braves at 6-8, their pitching staff has not looked good. And that bullpen, they lost Mark Melancon, and they all of a sudden they haven't found a guy that can really pitch in the 9th inning. That's cost them a couple of games already. The Marlins at 6-7, hey, they've had a good past week. I was certainly really low on them, and they've exceeded expectations so far. And the Nationals, they've only played a couple of games at full strength. Ended up getting a walk-off win last night off the bat of Kyle Schwarber. Sorry, Cole, but it happens. Now, the Diamondbacks took the game on Thursday, so they've split that, go win a couple more. But once they get their feet underneath them, the Nationals will be a better team. I'm very confident in that. But what do you guys make of this really weird National League East?
Yeah, sort of the same as the West. Like this team, this division is just a mess. It's all over the place. You got the Mets who haven't even played half their games, and they're in first place. One team I want to talk about, you talked a little bit about Atlanta and their pitching. That bullpen looks dicey after last year when, again, that was one of their strengths of their team, I feel like. Will Smith looks not that great. I think A.J. Minter is one of their more solid guys so far. I don't know, though. That whole bullpen is all over the place. But, yeah, look, that was sort of the big concern coming in. I don't think there was really any doubts about the pitching staff because it's solid. It's gotten sort of shaken up a bit over the first part of the season here, but that's one of their more solid parts of their team. Obviously, the offense is going to score plenty of runs, but that bullpen is sort of the glaring weakness, and it's sort of showed in over the past 2 weeks since the beginning of the year, and it's gotten them some big trouble late in games. So hopefully for their sake, they find a way to combat that. They find a way to get their relievers going in the right direction because it's going to be a mess if they don't. Yeah, that's really what I make of this division so far. It's just a mess. You talked about the Nationals. I think, like you said, once some of the bats get going, they're gonna be really good. This is one of the more underrated lineups in the National League, if you ask me, with Schwarber, Josh Bell, Trey Turner, obviously Juan Soto, who's arguably, if not the best hitter in baseball. So I mean, this team is going to get going, and they're going to be really good. It's just about finding a way to sort of get the offense going a little bit. But yeah, it's going to be a show. That's all you can really say.
I don't even know what to really say about this about this NL East division. It's tough because looking at it, the Braves have struggled. The bullpen has looked really bad. And we expected that when they lost Melanson, didn't bring back Shane Green. So there's those effects. And then you've got guys who are supposed to be at the top of that lineup producing, like Albies and Ozuna, who just aren't producing. So that has an effect as well. But I think they're going to find their stride. Like we said, what are they, 14 games in? We can't really take it like full swing, head on, serious yet. Yeah, there's worries with that team, but I still think they'll find a way to break out of it and come through. The Mets, it is ridiculous how they cannot win when the best pitcher in baseball is on the mound. I don't get how they can't win. It's ridiculous. It's honestly frustrating. If I were to DeGrom, I don't know how I'm still in New York dealing with that. The Nationals, I got to give credit to Kyle Schwarber. He launched that ball yesterday for the walk-off. That was a bomb. That was insane. So I'm happy for Schwarber. I think that the Nationals are going to be definitely fighting for that third place, but I've seen some good things from them so far. Really haven't seen the best of Juan Soto yet, but once he breaks in and gets going, there's no stopping Juan Soto. And then the Phillies. The Phillies have been pretty shocking so far. They've actually been playing better than I thought they would have started, and I don't think they're going to be up there for first place at the end of the season, but I definitely think they're a team that can make a run for that second place and try to make a run to the playoffs. And then there's the Marlins at the bottom.
Yeah, you said we haven't seen the best from Juan Soto. That is a quote from Ryan. And yes, you're right. We have not seen the best from Juan Soto, but he is currently hitting 350. Yeah. No, you weren't. You weren't slandering.
You've not seen the best from him.
Yeah, no, that's. I wanted to hit that home. Yes, you said that, but it's just funny that you're saying that, and you look at these numbers and you're like, "Wow, this is nuts." And their best player has actually been Josh Harrison, and I mean, he only played 5 games, but he actually killed it for the Nationals, which is really weird. But they need more from Victor Robles for sure. All right, we're running out of time, so we'll talk about the NL West and the NL Central to start next episode, or whenever we start talking about our standings. We'll start with those divisions because we got to wrap this up. We're gonna have one more show, I believe, while we're still here at Arizona State, and then of course we'll come to you guys throughout the summer. Of course, going live here on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe so you can always catch us on YouTube. And thank you for listening to the Golden Sombrero Show on behalf of Ryan Blank and Cole Bradley.